What's up, everybody? Welcome into this edition of Warchant TV, focusing on recruiting because Michael Langston is in the house, recruiting analyst for Warchant.com and Rivals.com. Michael, things getting a little bit crazy now, right? The second signing day approaches, that first Wednesday in February. How are things going in your world right now?
Oh, it's great. It's going to be a really busy first visit weekend this weekend. So I don't even know how many guys. People are like, yeah, but there's not a ton of visitors, Michael. And it's like, let me tell you something. New staffs, there's a chance. I have guys listed. We have I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4 official visitors so far. I was told it could be up to double digits or over double digits, like maybe up to 14 visitors for this weekend. That doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be official visitors, but could be unofficial guys that come in. And when you have a new staff, these kind of things are going to pop up, and you're going to see, we'll report different things like, guys we haven't even talked about, that could be on campus this weekend. So these guys are mashing it hard and they're working hard. And unfortunately for my end, it's a little more difficult because you're dealing with new coaching staffs, and certainly the leaks of what we saw in the previous staff don't seem like that's going to happen too often. So when you're dealing with new staffs, you have to develop new relationships, and then also that makes it where there's uncertainty as far as visitors of who's coming in, who isn't. We know the guys that we've locked in that we've got on our official visit page, and people can go to the premium recruiting board and they can see, the visitors that we have listed so far. But I wouldn't lock that in stone that it's just those 4 guys. So I'd just prepare yourself for that.
All right. Speaking of which, check out Warchant.com. If you're not a member, use the promo code Warchant30. Get you 30 free days of access to the ultimate Seminole sports source. All the questions we're going to take come from the premium recruiting board. We're going to omit a few of them. Michael will respond to you folks directly on the premium recruiting board, as he does 99.9% of the time. Anybody who asks a question, Michael always seems to dive in there and help you out. So we're going to keep things kind of maybe focused on a couple prospects asked by name, people that want these big picture sort of things. Michael will respond to you on the premium recruiting board. But with that said, let's go ahead and take one of our first questions. Michael comes from Reddick Knoll. It says, with Deshawn Edwards taking a visit to Georgia, I'm assuming it's Deshawn Edwards. He just says, with Edwards taking a visit to Georgia, how likely is it that he ends up in their class?
Well, I think it's right now I'd lean a little bit more towards FSU just because it's closer to home. He likes it. FSU's getting the last visit. Assuming FSU gets the last visit, which he's locked in for the 31st, I think as long as he follows through those visits, I still, even though Georgia's pushing there, I had a good conversation with the couple of Georgia people that work over there or a rival site, and basically told me like they're pretty stacked at running back. So they even said it probably would be smart even if he went over there because you're talking about 3 really good backs. One, Kendall Milton, who's already an early enrollee, so he's going to have an advantage on Deshawn. So he's going to be ahead of Deshawn. Not to mention James Cook, Zamir White, and whoever else they have left. I don't know their roster, but the situation at FSU is much more accommodating, where we don't know what you're going to get out of Laybourne. We don't know what you're going to get out of Anthony Grant. Obviously, they have Toa Philly signed, and then they're after good group of guys. So I think closer to home, and also the comfort level at FSU is a big deal. So I would give FSU the slight advantage right now, and it's an advantage for FSU that they get the last visit.
All right, there we go. Let's take this next question. Here comes from FSU Kenny. There's a couple questions that kind of seem to be in this general vicinity, so we'll take Kenny's. He seems to be the most lightning or most focused in on the question. But after an amazing start, things seem to have gone quiet. Is this Norvell's MO, keeping things close to the vest? What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't think it's quiet on their end. I think it might appear to be quiet from a fan or even from my view. From knowing all the visitors, this goes back to what we were talking about, where we don't know who all the visitors are going to be. It could be a bigger number, certainly in double digits as possible. So I think it's slowed down as far as, there's no commitments or there's no grad transfers, and they all got off to a hot start with, getting the kid from FIU, Devontae Taylor, a grad transfer, and then Deshawn Corbin, running back, came over. So I think everyone's expecting that flow to go the same way all the way up to signing. It doesn't work that way with transfers, and it doesn't work that way with grad transfers or even commitments at this stage, because most of these kids are in the second portion of the signing day, so they're going to take their time. They're going to make sure they take their visits, but I don't think the activity is really slowed down as much as far as what they're working on, the things they're doing as far as calling these different prospects, getting in touch with them, setting up visits, and getting things lined up. So I think the appearance may be slow, but it's not slow at all. And these guys are getting after it, and they're addressing holes in this roster, which I said to you, Aslan, was the biggest thing. Is what's impressed me the most was these guys understand what their holes are. They know they want some defensive ends, they want some running backs, and they want offensive linemen. Offensive linemen obviously is the top priority, but I wouldn't read too much into things have slowed down a little bit as far as news or commits or guys jumping on board or stuff like that. Now, a lot of these grad transfers too, some of them most of them are going to be in the later time area as far as signing or enrolling in like May. So keep that in mind. But I think when you have stuff like with the transfers that happen so quickly with FSU, it gives people a false sense of security that, oh, we're supposed to get flow of information nonstop, and doesn't work that way. And then with Norvell's staff, I think they're going to keep things close to the vest. I don't think we're going to see too many leaks or stuff just leaks out there. Now, obviously, if you get Norvell or Kenny Dillingham and they throw a few hints here and there on Twitter, then you can kind of feel something's going down, and it's my job to find out what that is. But I don't think the action has slowed down that much as far as activity with the staff.
Well, I mean, how much of it too, Michael, is just you kind of mentioned a little bit there, but how much of it is just the calendar? I mean, the quiet period is underway, and then also the fact we're talking about grad transfers. They got three. They needed a running back, they got a running back. They needed a linebacker, they got a linebacker. They needed an offensive lineman, they got one. But now everybody's pretty much enrolled at their school of choice, so that grad transfer window for now is kind of closed, but it could certainly open up after players see where they stand at their current universities after the spring season, right?
Yeah, and the thing of grad transfer news, and I've explained this on numerous times on the board and even talked to you a little bit about this, but grad transfer recruiting is not the same as regular recruiting when you're talking about high school or JUCO kids. Some of these guys, they take visits. Some of these guys don't. Some of these guys just decide when they're ready, whether they're signing or whether they're enrolling in May and signing in February and then enrolling in May. It still doesn't matter. It's like it's a crapshoot where you don't know how it's going to swing one way or the other. And then these guys are also, they already been through the recruiting process when you're talking about grad guys or transfers in general. So they're not going to be, willing to talk to a lot of people, as far as telling things or leaking stuff out. So I think a lot of people guess when it comes to grad transfers, but a lot of times, unless I get a tip or something, you're not going to know much. They keep this thing pretty silent. Obviously, I knew about Trey McKitty because I'm close to the family. I knew them. I know Trey well. So that was kind of a different thing. But if you don't have a tight end there, it's hard to decide when these guys are going to sign. And I think you put up a good point, Aslan, that these guys aren't going to enroll till May. So there's not really a rush to go ahead and decide right now as far as decision-wise.
All right, let's take the next question here, Michael. You need to get into your crystal ball. Travis Miller, 22, wants to know, who is the big splash you think Florida State gets next signing period?
Oh, man. That's really tough to say right now. I mean, you're asking me to give you a big splash when I don't even know how the visits have gone or, how things shake down with that. I'd say a guy to watch, say Jalen St. John, an offensive lineman, 4-star offensive lineman. He's certainly a guy to watch. Donovan Kaufman, he's got ties to the FSU staff. He's visiting this weekend. He's a Rivals 250 DB. Ole Miss is also involved, but FSU has ties there. And then speedster Corey Wren is another one that's visiting this weekend. So I think those are some guys that to watch out for. But asking me for a big splash, I mean, Deshawn Edwards would be a big splash to me. I mean, I think they have a good, solid shot at landing him. But you're talking about, there's so many guys that could be visiting the next 3 weekends that it's almost impossible for me to just say who's going to be the big splash guy without knowing how those visits go. So, I mean, those are a few of the guys that I would eye as far as, I guess, splash worthy. But there's going to be a lot more visitors, guys. So I gotta wait and see how these visits go.
Several questions about running backs. B. Noles 7, as well as Reginald, kind of asking about Gibbs, the running back, Jamar Gibbs, or Jamire Gibbs, rather. Where does Florida State stand with him, do you think, Michael?
Well, I think there's a lot of suitors. We know LSU's heavily involved. LSU's really high, as far as him being a target. Hard to compete with the national champs. So, I mean, that's really tough. And then you have Georgia. They didn't get Zach Evans or they moved on from Zach Evans. So you got to believe they're going to push there. We know Ohio State doesn't even have a running back in their class. So he's going to be a high priority there. So my thing is, ask me when there's a visit set up, which I think, it's something FSU's working on and hopes to, land a visit as far as the 24th or the 31st or maybe a midweek visit. But until he visits, I would consider him a long shot, especially with the competition that you're battling him with, even though there are ties to Jamar Gibbs and this staff. That's still, you're talking about the competition I just listed, and one of them doesn't even have a running back yet. So that's a tough push for FSU. But the main thing I'm watching for him and I'm going to study is is FSU going to get a visit? If FSU gets a visit, they're in the conversation. And we'll have to see where things go from that visit. But right now, the focus should be, can FSU get a visit?
Let's take this question from Dylan Garrett over on the Premium Recruiting Board. He asks, where do things stand with Broderick Jones? He's a 5-star defensive lineman out of Lithonia, Georgia, 6'6", 300. Where do things stand with him, Michael?
Well, he's officially visiting Arkansas, Auburn, and Georgia. Those are the 3 teams that he said he's officially visiting. So I think you can put a bow and a wrap on that one, that FSU probably will not get him in for a visit or have a chance to pull him. I personally think it's Georgia, Auburn, probably Georgia if I had to lean one way or the other, since they just lost their tackle to Tennessee and Cade Mays. So I think he'll be a priority, and I think they'll find a way to get him in there and squeeze him in. But I don't think FSU has a shot there. I think he showed that he's interested, but at the end of the day, those 3 teams I listed all have a connection with Broderick. As far as a long-standing relationship, FSU has a connection, but they don't have the long-standing relationship like he does with those schools. So I don't think FSU will be in the mix there.
Davis P3, any word on whether Norvell will hold a junior day in the spring?
I think we've got it listed on our board, and we've listed with the unofficial visit. I think there's going to be one. I think they're calling it a junior day on January 24th, 25th. That's going to be a junior day where, there's a lot of underclassmen that are coming in. I think I've listed close to 15 guys or 12, 13 guys or something like that of guys that are coming over. There's going to be more, I'm sure, added to that list, but that will be the first one. And I think they're going to do another one. I think they're going to have 3. I think they'll probably have one in March from what I can gather. So I think probably one this month, one in February, and probably one in March. So I think those are going to be the 3 months that you can watch for junior days, and so that's kind of what to watch for.
All right. Let's take another question. Obviously, it's what we're doing here, taking it from our subscribers on warchant.com. This one comes from Maxwell Gibbs.
Okay.
2-part question. Let's go with the first one first. Have you heard of any prospects that could now be considering FSU after the hiring of running backs coach David Johnson?
Yeah, I put a big post on the day he was hired and listed some guys that I think he'll be after him. Obviously, we mentioned Darren Williamson, he's a Vols commitment. FSU's recruiting him as a receiver. I think he's a guy that's involved there. Now, as far as running backs, because I think Williamson's going to be a receiver prospect, but as far as running backs, I'm still working on that. I know he's you've got a good relationship with Coventry Bradford, who right now isn't scheduled to visit FSU yet, but he's got a good relationship there. So that's one guy. He's close to LaDainian Webb, who's a guy that's visiting on this weekend, January 17th. So that's one to watch. I think FSU has a really good shot to pull him. So that's the guy I'll be watching as far as a commit or anything like that this weekend. But I'm sure there's more. I just want to see more. Once I know they offered, then I can kind of go from there. But I'm sure there's a lot more. I just don't know names for you guys right now, except for the guys I just covered.
And the second part of his question, Michael, do you believe that David Johnson can do better in Dade County than Telly?
Well, I mean, and this is I really like Telly. Like, I really like him. I think Telly is very good at locating South Florida prospects. He does a very good job. He helps them get their foots in the door as far as guys. But the problem was in whether it was Telly or whether it was the combination of the staff he was with that was so unorganized that it affected how good he can be as far as bringing in South Florida kids. But I think David will do a really good job there. I think David's a very good recruiter. But the bottom line of going back to Telly is, he brought in Dante Lucas, which it looked like it was trending towards FSU anyway with that. So I don't know if you give credit to him or there. But you had several guys like Isaiah Walker, who was very close to him. He went to your arch rival in Florida. So there was a lot of South Florida guys that he had ties to, but it wasn't like he was bringing in a lot of 4 or 5-star guys. But I think that's also, you can't just put that on Telly because you have to look at the product of what you're showing on the field, where things were going with Coach Willie Taggart at that time. It was a very bad situation, so it's hard to sell that. So you can't really put that on Telly. Telly's good at locating guys, so I don't think you can really compare the two. Yeah, I think Johnson is coming into a staff that's very organized, structured, and all that stuff. So I think David's going to do a really solid job. He's one of the he'll be one of the best recruiters on that staff. He's a phenomenal recruiter from everything I've checked out. So I think David will do very well.
How about a question from Neurotic Nole fan? I know we're trying to focus on just single prospects instead of these kind of broader entire positions, which Michael will get to the subscribers on warchant.com. But Neurotic Nole fan, part of his question asks about the status of Malachi Weidman. It's one of his topics of interest. The top two is that and the offensive line. I'm sure you can get to him on the offensive line. But Malachi Weidman, what is going on, Michael? He's
going to take official visits, I think, to Oregon. What was the other one? Tennessee, and I can't even say this without laughing. FAU. So he's actually going to give Will Taggart a chance to
Are
win
you
him
serious?
over.
He's going to visit Boca?
Yeah, he's going to visit Boca, and he's going to visit Willie Taggart. I personally think that's just because of the relationship, and he didn't really have anywhere else he wanted to go at that time as far as visiting. Had a good relationship with Coach Taggart, so I think he wants to be fair and give him a chance. I personally think Oregon's the threat out of all those teams because Oregon has a pretty good basketball program, football program speaks for itself. Just won the Rose Bowl, so I think they're basically the biggest threat for FSU. But it can't underscore this enough. He is very, very close to Leonard Hamilton. He's got a great relationship. He knows every player on that team. He's good friends with Scotty Barnes that's going to FSU, or I think it's Scotty Barnes.
Yep.
I think I got it right.
You're right.
But, there's a lot of connections there. But at the same time, FSU's not going to sit on their butt eating potato chips and hamburgers and wait for Malachi to make his mind up. They'll leave a spot for him. But recruiting guys like Darren Williamson, D. Beckwith, a 6'5", 210 athlete that's really talented, and there's a few others in there that they're recruiting that kind of play the same position that Malachi does. But right now, I was told that it's likely that he is going to visit FSU unofficially at some point in that time frame between now and signing day. But right now, it's just we have to see how the visits go. And the other thing is he has to pass his test score. So all that stuff doesn't mean anything when the visits or where he goes unless we get some confirmation if he can get that. And I think if he gets that test score and he does unofficially visit FSU like I expect, I still think it's hard to not see him at FSU, especially based on the relationships he has with, Coach Ham and, the basketball staff. And then obviously he has a great relationship with Coach Dugans at receivers coach, and he knows the way he's going to be utilized. So I think I would still lean a little bit more towards FSU. But again, you do want to see him on campus. And if he doesn't visit on campus, then it's kind of a up in the air coin flip.
So has he officially visited before?
Yes, he visited on the last weekend of the early signing period. That's why everyone thought that he was going to sign his letter of intent early, but he decided was talked into taking visits just in case there was something else out there that it thought was better. But I think, he took his official visit that weekend on last weekend of the unofficial or the early signing period. So, yes, he already used up his official visit then.
And is he still training with Adrian McPherson?
Yep, they're still together. They do, go everywhere together, and so he's definitely there. And I can tell with Adrian, it's a very uncomfortable situation, just because I'm thinking I would bet not because of FSU allegiance, but you're committed to FSU. Let's get this thing signed if it was up to AD, but it's not, and it's Malachi's decision. And AD's not pushing them one way or the other, and he never does with those kids. He has to let everyone do their own decision, but at the same time, sure, it's kind of a circus of following all that stuff and making plans. But yes, he is definitely still involved with him. Just stays in contact because the kid needs a mentor. Doesn't have, the greatest family life in the world. So AD's done a lot to help this kid to keep his mind straight and do all the right things. And AD's been through this process, so he knows all the questions that Malachi would have, and he's a good guy to have with him in case he has some questions about things that are going on. All
right. Hey, we started with Reddick Knoll. Let's end with Reddick Knoll. If your question hasn't been answered on the video, Michael will get to you on the premium recruiting board.
8 p.m. tonight.
What's that?
8 p.m. tonight.
Yeah, there you go.
I will address all your questions that I will even address the ones that I addressed with Aslan today, but I will address every single question on the board. So don't worry, guys. If we get to your question, I will get to it tonight.
That's how Michael rolls. He gets them all done. All right, last one for you and I, the appetizer for the 8 p.m. one. Will Kaufman, or rather with Kaufman, visiting Ole Miss, do you think we sit in a good spot?
Well, I think, Ole Miss is a threat. It's the biggest threat on there. He supposedly is going to visit Ole Miss after, the FSU visit the following weekend. But who knows if he sees everything he likes this weekend and he's good to go, and he might jump on and commit, and then he doesn't even take that visit. So we'll have to wait and see how this visit goes before. I would say on paper, I still like FSU just because FSU was the first contact, great relationship. He really likes Coach Norvell a lot. He's got a relationship with Coach Marv. He knows him. So there's several coaches on the staff that he knows pretty well. So I think we'll have to wait and see how this visit goes first before I can really truly address someone's for sure leader. But I would say going to visits, I still like FSU a little more than I do Ole Miss.
All right. Question for me, Michael. I get to ask you one. I mean, I don't know if you want to give me like a top 3, top 5. Like, what do you think? What's your impression of this staff in terms of their priorities position-wise? I mean, everyone talks about offensive line. Obviously, we know that's super important. Quarterback, they got some of that in the early signing period, but I guess maybe not even for 2021, but maybe between now and that first Wednesday in February, what is, I guess, maybe the 3 positions that they really want to get kind of covered? Because, Kaufman, obviously being defensive back, might not come on the radar for a lot of people, but maybe that's a position that they now feel they need to replenish with Stanford Samuels declaring and Levante Taylor graduating.
Well, I think it's in this order. I would say offensive line, running back, and defensive end. Those are the priority positions. Those are priorities where they really, like I've said this for a few times, they already got 1 grad transfer. They would like to get one or two more. one more would certainly be very effective. But you got your left tackle and your right tackle. But if you could get three, that would really set them in a good position. And then at running back, we've gone through some of these guys, but they got one signee already. They'd like to add two or three more. So you got that position. Then defensive ends, they're already working on, we know grad transfers that they're active with that they want to possibly put in this class at defensive end. They want to get some pass rushers. They want pure pass rushers. They don't want just run guys, run stoppers. They want guys that can get after the quarterback. So those are the three positions they definitely want. They also want safeties, which that includes Donovan Kaufman. That's why he's in the mix there, because they need safeties. Corners, I think they're okay with. They could add one more if that numbers work their way for them, but I think those three other positions are the main focus. I think Norvell was touched on that right when he got the job. He went through the early signing period. He said these are the positions that we definitely want to nail, and these are where the holes are at. And I think that's what I love about this staff is they understand what the holes are, and they're aggressively making sure they fill those holes to give themselves a chance going into next season with whoever is running the show at quarterback or whatnot. They want to make sure they position everyone in this team with a chance to win now, not win later. They're focused on winning now, and that kind of shows with how they're addressing these needs. But those are the three positions, Aslan, that I think they're pretty locked in on.
Boom, there you go. From his mouth to your guys' ears. Michael Langston, recruiting analyst for Warchant.com and Rivals.com. Check out all of his work on the premium recruiting board. If you're not a member, again, use the promo code Warchant30. It's a really good time to do that because, again, that signing period's coming back up, and lots of things will come back into focus. Michael will let you know what's going down when it comes to Florida State and the recruiting. Michael, as always, thanks for the time, buddy.
You got it, man.